Okay, welcome to the Kayvman Show. This is episode 8. The last time we spoke, we left off talking about natural eating, why it's better for you, why we should use that as a sort of guiding principle. And I want to explain why not only is that a sort of nice philosophy that people have, but it's actually a very effective one. We've spoken already about how modern foods cause problems as human beings eating more and more modern foods, they've had more and more poor health outcomes, including diabetes, heart disease, cancer, obesity, etc., etc. We've spoken about seed oils. We've spoken about the vilification of more ancient foods, things like sugars from fruits, things like fats from meat and dairy. And we're going to kind of put a bow in that before moving on to the non-nutrition part of this podcast. And we're going to explain why you should stick to natural foods preferentially. The reason is because we've evolved to eat natural foods. Anything we've evolved to eat, we're going to have better health outcomes with. If a lion, for example, was eating sugarcane or peanuts all day long, he would very, very quickly, he'd probably survive for a short period of time, but he'd very quickly have, you'd expect to have poor health outcomes because he's not evolved to eat that. And then it's the same thing with us. We are human beings, right? We think of ourselves as separate from the rest of the animal kingdom, but at the end of the day, we are an animal called human being. And therefore, as a species, we have a species appropriate diet. And evolution doesn't change so quickly. So in the past 5,000 years, we have started to process grains. We started to be able to eat grains. And we can live off of grains. We can survive off of grains. But the nutritional benefits versus the nutritional problems with grains, I would argue it's definitely not worth feeding a whole society on grain. And grain meaning wheat, oats, including rice, you're going to see poor health outcomes from eating grains. Why? Because it's not a species appropriate food for us. Yes, we can survive on it. So if someone's starving, yes, grain is great, right? But if you really want to thrive, you're going to have to eat a species appropriate diet. And we've spoken about the foods that do work. It's meat and it's fruit. But having this sort of emotional or even spiritual buy-in to this natural food, this evolutionary food sort of philosophy is very helpful. And I've noticed that when people do buy into it emotionally, and a lot of people are hesitant about that, they do better. Having that as a kind of North Star, having natural eating as a North Star is really, really helpful because it kind of shortcuts a lot of the guesswork that you would have to do. Just pretend that you're in the jungle now. We're living in an urban jungle, but don't let, our civilization fool you. We haven't changed. Our bodies haven't really changed that much from when we were hunter-gatherers. Evolution doesn't work that quickly. It was only 5,000 plus years ago that we were hunter-gatherers, and we've been in human form for 100,000 years, and even before that we were hunter-gatherers. So you could argue that we've been hunter-gatherers for almost 1 million years, right? It's anywhere between 100,000 to 1 million years versus 5,000, right? 5,000 is a drop in the bucket, and people don't really understand that, right? You kind of have to understand that we physically are hunter-gatherers. When you start to match up your mental approach of being a hunter-gatherer to that physical approach, things get a lot easier. When I was first getting into the nutrition space, the biggest light bulb moment I had was when I found out about Paleo. Someone introduced me to Paleo, and I read that book, and a light bulb went off, and it just clicked and it made sense. And I never really went back. Once I saw the benefits, I saw how easy it is to get lean. I saw how much better my nutrition is. I saw all these problems go away, small problems that I had go away. I was hooked, I was sold. And it never really went away. I played with going back and forth over the years, but that was always kind of something I would fall back to, was a paleo. And this is a type, what I'm referring to here is a type paleo, right? It's a type of Paleolithic food. It's a type of caveman eating. I call it caveman eating, spelt with a K so I can copyright it. But yeah, I mean, caveman eating is very similar to paleo, except there are a few updates. Right? What's different from caveman versus paleo is an emphasis on meats, particularly red meat. And that's partially to do away with the fear that people have of red meat. And that includes also butter and eggs and other animal fats, natural animal fats. There are some exceptions to animal fats, so I'm not a big fan of monogastric animals, meaning chicken or pigs. I'm a little bit cagey about fish. Not sure that everyone should be having massive amounts of fish, but those are asterisks. Those are things you don't have to worry about just yet. Eating animal fats, a special emphasis on natural sugars, so that's fruit and honey, things that our body have evolved to be able to deal with. Even in large doses, you can have pretty large doses. That might be a case-by-case basis though. Like I think some people who are overweight probably want to limit their sugars until they've lost the weight. As you lose weight, your insulin sensitivity tends to go up, meaning your ability to deal with carbs. So that might be a case-by-case basis. There is a case to be said for low carb for a lot of people, especially at first, but eventually I think human beings should be not worried about carbs and sugars at all. So those two foods are going to have special emphasis. Paleo likes to include nuts and seeds. I'm not a big fan of nuts and seeds. Yes, it is natural, but in nature you would not find nuts and seeds that you could eat very, very easily. You also have to process them a lot, and I just don't think we're evolved to eat them in large doses. Certainly not. There are animals that clearly can eat lots of nuts and seeds, birds and squirrels and stuff like that, but I don't think that we have the machinery to deal with that, and they tend to be very inflammatory for people, and hunter-gatherers don't tend to eat massive amounts of it. They do have some in their diet, but they don't tend to have massive amounts of it. That's one thing. Would be limiting nuts and seeds. That's how it would be different from paleo. I'm not sure if paleo likes dairy or not. Again, dairy is one of those ones that's on a case-by-case basis. Some people deal with dairy really, really well. I heard that there's a racial component, whatever that means, meaning people from Northern Europe who have descended from Northern Europeans tend to deal with it a lot better. For me, what I found is once I went full fat dairy and also completely got rid of grains from my diet and got rid of other inflammatory foods like nuts and seeds. So once I went carnivore, I was able to deal with dairy very well. All my sort of lactose intolerance, whatever I thought that was, I wasn't lactose intolerant really. I just had an aversion to dairy, and that was based on other things in my diet. So it was just too much for my body to handle. I was eating too many different types of foods. My body didn't know what to do with them, couldn't process them, and so I would suffer with dairy. I would get really bad stomach aches. And what I realized is A, adding the full fat, and B, getting rid of those species inappropriate diet, the foods that are not appropriate for humans, as a way of speaking it, things like nuts, seeds, grains, helped a lot. What else? Paleo does include roots and vegetables. For a lot of people, that's probably okay, but I don't include it. I find that vegetables tend to slow me down, weaken me, cause bloat, cause other small issues. So I don't know, but it's hard for me to know personally whether getting rid of vegetables and roots from my diet or adding lots of meat to my diet caused this, but I saw huge benefits when I went to carnivore, meaning a lot of red meat and getting rid of the roots and vegetables completely. Little things like when I was brushing my teeth, sometimes I would spit and there would be like blood. Not a lot, but I just thought that was normal. I was like, oh, I'm brushing my teeth. That went away like this. Skin issues, like I used to get like acne breakups, went away like this as soon as I went carnivore and got rid of the vegetables and the roots. What else? I noticed less gray hairs. I don't know if that's a big deal to you or not, but I do think it helped with sort of the aging process in general. And various other things, gut issues, sinus issues, various other things kind of went away and got a lot better when I went carnivore. So there's just a slightly different emphasis on the caveman diet that I'm talking about here, and I'm open to interpretation on the name, and paleo. But it is a form of paleo. I guess it's a restricted slightly form of paleo, and then there's an emphasis on certain foods. I really think that red meat is the key. Red meat is super nutrient dense and tends to have this sort of almost magical quality. And for people who have an aversion to red meat for whatever reason, people have various different aversions to red meat, ethical, environmental, just general social conditioning. Understand that this is a respectful thing. I love red meat and I also love cows. I think they're incredible animals. They're a gift to humanity, to be honest with you, both and to the environment too. Like, we'll talk about this in another thing. I don't believe there's any problem with cows and meat as part of the meat industry for the environment. I don't think there's an ethical problem with it if they are raised in the way that they should be raised, which is grass-fed and grass-finished, pasture-raised. I don't have any issue with that, and I definitely don't have an issue with the health thing. If not only do I think that you should not be scared of red meat, but I actually encourage people to eat as much red meat as possible. So I've experimented with 4 pounds a day and had seen massive benefits with that, but that was the only thing I was eating. And I go down to as low as 1.5 pounds a day, and that's fine too. So I encourage people to eat red meat as much as possible. So yeah, that's the special emphasis. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap this one up. This is a short one, and just kind of leave you with this to kind of meditate on, is try to think like a hunter-gatherer and realize that that is what your body is. That's how it's evolved. We haven't really evolved past that, and you're gonna do better by eating naturally. If I was in the jungle, what would I eat? If you use that as a starting point for your nutrition and you kind of have that emotional buy-in, and there's other things too, it's not just diet. We'll talk about this. It's a whole kind of lifestyle, and a lot of the problems that we see in society, much wider problems, including mental health problems, come from that mismatch between our modern environment and what we're evolved for. But that's another topic for another time. So yeah, Try to think like a hunter-gatherer. Try to think like a caveman and see where that gets you with your nutrition. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.